All the year, the flax dam festered in the heart of the townland. Green and heavy-headed flax had rotted there, weighted down by huge sods. Flax is a type of plant that grows annually once a year, and it grows from a seed which is edible. And flax is often grown for its fiber. So flax dam is a muddy patch of earth where it is soaked to extract the flax. Soaking it in these muddy patches makes it very stinky, and it's very dirty because the plant basically rots in that. This line describes a flax dam, which is a man-made pool or pond which is used for soaking the flax plants, and it is located in the middle of a small town or rural area. And over the course of the year, the flax has decayed and become heavy and weighed down by the large pieces of soil, dirt that is stuck to the roots of this plant. Daily it sweltered in the punishing sun, bubbles gargled delicately, blue bottles wove a strong gaze of sound around the smell. So the rotting is helped along by the hot, scorching sun. The bubbles in the wet earth are letting off a gargling sound. Blue bottles are a particular type of a fly. They are presumably buzzing around this flax dam. And blue bottles are actually found on decaying materials, so in filth. Now, there were dragonflies, spotted butterflies, but best of all was the warm, thick slobber of frog spawn that grew like clotted water in the shade of banks. So the poet mentions various insects around the flax dam like dragonflies, butterflies, blue bottles, and however, what he enjoyed the most was the frog spawn, for the eggs of the frog, that is frog spawn, that grew in the shade along the edges of the dam, like as if it was submerged or clotted like jelly and floating on the surface of the water, thick and slimy. Here every spring I would fill jam-pot-fulls of the jellied specks to range on window-sills at home, on shelves at school, and wait and watch until the fattening dots burst into nimble swimming tadpoles. Every spring, the poet used to collect the frog spawn in jars and place them on windowsills at home or on the shelves at school, and he would wait and watch for the eggs to gradually develop into tadpoles. So he leaves these jars full of the frog spawn on his windowsills, and he would leave it in the sun to watch it and experience it eventually turning into tadpoles. So he would even take it to school for more study. Miss Walls would tell us how the daddy frog was called a bullfrog, and how he croaked, and how the mammy frog laid hundreds of little eggs, and this was frog spawn. So Miss Walls, who seems to be a teacher of the speaker, she during her science lessons on frog reproduction would also use these frog spawns in the jars to explain her own chapter for a better, clearer idea for the students. And she would say that the male frog is called a bullfrog, who have super low and loud croak, and the female frog lays these hundreds of eggs in the form of these slimy frog spawns. You could tell the weather by frogs too, for they were yellow in the sun and brown in rain. So it is an indicator of the weather, it seems, because it turned yellow in the sunlight and would change its color into brown when it rained. Then one hot day, when fields were rank with cow dung in the grass, the angry frogs invaded the flax dam. I ducked through hedges to a coarse croaking that I had not heard before. So one hot day, when the fields were full of cow dung and filth, of the waste of these cows and other domestic animals, the frogs seemed to invade the flax dam. The poet was taken aback by this sudden aggressive croaking from the frogs, a sound that was new and unnerving to him. And this is the place where till now we had found him quite enjoying the whole thing, the frog spawn, the process of reproduction of the frogs, but now he is quite revolted or taken aback by looking at the reaction of the croaking bullfrog. It seemed as if the frogs were angry. They were angry on how this speaker had scooped frog spawn since he was a child, and now they have come here, gathered here, waiting for the right time for taking revenge, for attack. The air was thick with a bass chorus. Right down the dam, gross-bellied frogs were cocked on sods, their loose necks pulsed like sails. So the poet describes evidently, very in great detail, that how the air was full of the deep resonant croaking from the frogs, from the male frogs, and describes how the scene with large bellied frogs sitting on pieces of turf, their throats pulsating as they croaked, much like the sails billowing in the wind. So they were gathered there, and it seemed as if they were a whole army waiting for an invasion, waiting for the right time to attack on the speaker and to take revenge. Their loose legs pulsed like sails. This is an example of a simile. While croaking, it was puffing out. The throats were puffing out. So that is described as pulsating sails of ships or boats. The frogs were cocked up, as in pulled back, ready for firing like a gun. So the speaker is much appalled watching the bullfrogs. And then he goes on saying, some hopped. The slap and plop were obscene threats. Some sat poised like mud grenades, their blunt heads farting. Some of them were hopping around, and some of them were making loud threatening noises, while others sat calm and still, like mud grenades waiting to explode. And the sounds they made were described as being very crude. I sickened, turned, and ran. The great slime kings were gathered there for vengeance, and I knew that if I dipped my hand, the spawn would clutch it. So finally, the speaker expresses his disgust and fear, leading him to run away from the dam quite immediately, and he refers to the frogs as great slime kings, suggesting their dominance and control over the dam. And he feared that if now at this moment he still touched or dared to touch the frog spawn, he would be attacked, and the frog spawn itself would pull him into the depths, suggesting the harsh realities of nature which would involve you in or take you in or swallow you into. The speaker is much intimidated and he runs away from there. He is shaken by seeing those nasty big bullfrogs who were all gathered in one place. This marks the transition from how the speaker, who was an innocent lad, enjoyed this full process, and he would enjoy it and collect frog spawn and quite unaware of the surrounding and being completely solely involved in his own personal happiness and joy. But as he grew up, he started paying attention to the surrounding, where he found these bullfrogs, and he found the surrounding quite threatening. So he has grown up. So there is the loss of innocence. Now he is a mature person, and therefore there is experience getting in, and therefore he is appalled by the very thing that had amused him when he was young. So for the speaker, the joy of this frog spawn had been forever spoiled by this traumatic experience. So the harmless joy of his childhood has now changed into a traumatic experience for him, due to his own mature understanding of the harsh realities of nature around. So the great slime kings, this is also an example of metaphor, because the speaker thinks of the bullfrogs metaphorically as kings, because they seem to dominate the landscape of the flax dam with their loud croaks and hopping and their presence there. He even says that their movement, the very movement of the bullfrogs, using the word slap and plop, seemed to him as obscene, as vulgar, as unpleasant, undesirable, shocking, horrifying, anything we can say. So in short, we can say that this is a transition from childhood innocence to a more mature, complex understanding of nature and the world around us. This has been portrayed here. The title, Death of a Naturalist, implies the end of the poet's naive fascination with nature, replaced by a complex and realistic view of the natural world. And that's why the poet has been distinctly been divided into two stanzas. The first one showing the joyful exploration and fascination of a young child with the natural world, and the second stanza which shows the reflection of a child's fear and his move or transition from innocence to maturity. So we can also say that Heaney has captured the transformation of a child's perspective, which makes him realize and see the complex realities of nature and life as he grows up. And that's why he loses his romanticized view of nature at the end.